Hey everyone. Hey Heath. I'm so excited to be here with you again today. I just wanted to briefly introduce who we are and what we do, and then we'll dive right into the questions that we're going to answer today. So, my name is Anna Frolik. I'm the founder of Wonderland Publishing, the creator of the Oracle of the Magical Fairy Forest, and I'm here today with Heath Armstrong from Rage Create. He's also created four really beautiful decks, including this one that I have here
Yeah.
with me today. This is one of my favorites. And together we have created the Deck Creators Launchpad, where we support others on their journey of bringing their card decks to life, from creating to launching to selling their decks long term. And so we're really excited to be back together today with a long list of questions that we've received from our audience and from our community. And so we're going to randomly pick some and answer them together. So, you
You're going to
ready?
do the random number generator?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that was the
sweet.
easiest. I have over 100 questions here, so it's going to be the easiest way to pick. So let's start with question number 10. Just going to pull up my spreadsheet here. What is the step-by-step process to take a deck from vision to finished product?
I will preface by saying that there is absolutely no direct step-by-step process that stays consistent for everyone. It's more of like a spiral, and as a creative, you can do it in so many different ways, and there's oftentimes so many different steps that are happening at the same time. It's easier to look on paper at something in a direct list and be like, okay, here's the process, and thinking about it from the concept of like idea into physical form into other people's hands, right? So, um, read the question again. The step-by-step process from taking it from vision to,
From vision to finished product.
okay, finished product just could mean printing it, not necessarily like selling it or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I think we'll probably have other questions that go into launching and selling, so I think we can
Okay.
just keep it simple.
Well, we just did a few workshops kind of on this process, going from visualization. So Anna's created this really amazing visualization workshop that we move through, and its goal is to help you take all the abstract ideas that you have in your head and put them into a structure or a concept that can be very real and tangible, and often maybe describable in just a couple sentences. Um, and so getting that vision, there's several different steps for the visionary process, and you can maybe give a brief overview of those, Anna, if you want right now.
Yeah, I think I could just share a few basic things. So, visioning your deck, like the first thing is deciding on the topic or the theme of your deck, then feeling into, basically imagine yourself holding your finished deck in your hands. What does it
Yeah.
look like? What does it include? How many cards? Does it include a guidebook? What kind of box is it packaged in? Are you seeing any specific kind of features like, gold edges or special finishes? There's so many different things to consider. What is the art going to look like? Things like that. And then also the other part I feel that is really important is really being aware of who your ideal customer is. So who are you creating your deck for? Sometimes it could be yourself initially, and usually when it's something you're receiving medicine that is helpful for you on your own journey, then it's also going to help somebody else. But maybe you're a little bit further along on your journey. Maybe you already have an established business or a healing practice, or you're an intuitive, you're already working with people who come to you with specific types of questions or for solutions to specific problems, then you probably already have a pretty good idea of who your ideal client is at this time and the person you're creating your deck for. So, who is this person? What transformation are you guiding them through? And also, what makes them feel excited about working with your deck? Like what is, it's basically the selling points, but what makes them want to have it in their hands and use it now? So things like
Which is
that.
usually just like what makes it excited for you to hold your deck in your hands. You know, it's oftentimes the creator is making the deck from a place of like, I want this for myself. And that's one of the most pure places to work from. And it attracts other people that will use it in a similar way, but also use it in their own way. And I always find that like, oh, it's really interesting how you use that deck very different than I use it, you know? Um, and one thing you touched on at the beginning of that visualization process was thinking about the audience or, who's going to be using it, but also like what does the card deck look like? What does it feel like? And so there's that process of visualization also that is the fun like pre-design of like, oh yeah, what are these potential features that we could have on this deck? Like what do these cards look like? How thick are they? Do they have, you know, gold or red edges? And a lot of times the process of actually looking at other people's decks that have been created and getting an idea is really fun. We do that too in the group where we do the kind of like Kickstarter launch parties, or we do the card concept or features calls where we get to look at all the different types of boxes and card edges. That's some of my favorite stuff because it's like, ooh, it's like being in a candy shop almost, just putting together your own unique palette. So that's a big part of the visualization for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's a really fun process for sure. It's one of my favorite parts of the journey as well.
Yeah.
And there's
So
always so much inspiration that comes from looking at other decks and
that first feeling that you get when you visualize holding your card deck in your hands, like really truly visualize it, and you have a better idea of what the features are and how it's going to look and feel. And we have a 3D card mockup tool too that you can upload files once you have like a design, and it'll show the cards in 3D spinning. And it's like when you get to that point, it makes the project seem so much more real than when it's just in your head. And yeah, there's a lot of momentum that builds off of that. So I think coming out of the visualization process, like this is where it can split in a million different ways because like some cards have writing, some don't, some have guidebooks, some don't. Um, some are text heavy on the design with really no artwork. Some are all artwork on the design. And so you're going through that process of picking how many cards are going to be in your deck. What is the problem you're solving with the deck, or what is the concept of the deck? And it's moving into that design phase of actually getting your first card done, getting your first couple cards done. And that's also a really fun phase because when you start going into the draft mode of what a card can look like, oftentimes like you could nail it on the first try, but for me, it's always like 10 to 20 different versions of me just like screwing around before the one that actually feels right actually clicks. And that's another good part about having the community is like we can go in there and share along the way and get feedback. But um, that I think the next step after that is like, yeah, how do you get a rough draft of your first card? Um, if there's text, great. If there's not, great. If there's design, like, and what is that going to look like? It doesn't have to mean that you have an artist if you're not an artist lined up to do the card already. It doesn't mean that you have to know all the text that's going to go into it. You don't have to have all of the answers for how you're going to do a guidebook or any of it. It's just let's do this one card. Um, and then you do one card and you go through that. I feel like then you really start building momentum because it's like, okay, now I have this one. What's the next one? And then it's just kind of steamrolls into the first five, first 10. And then that's when kind of for my process, the box design and stuff starts to happen as well. Um, which doesn't have to. It could happen after all the cards are designed. It could happen before the cards are designed. But yeah, for me, I'm curious in your process, Anna, when you're starting to do your first couple cards, like how does that flow?
so usually it really depends on what kind of project it is. If I'm guiding a client through the process, it's going to look a little bit different from, creating a deck for myself.
Mhm.
But usually, like if it's a really structured step-by-step process, we'll start with the content phase. We'll get the content for all the cards ready and then for the guidebook. And that can also, be parallel to other things that we're doing at the same time. Usually we'll start with the content for the cards, then we start designing. I you hand that over to my graphic designer, and she'll create some first drafts. So that's kind of creating the first card. And usually we'll do like 3 to 5 variations to look at different options, like different layouts, font choices, things like that. If she's also designing the art, then we'll start developing the style of the art at the same time. And then we'll pick our favorites. If we're working with a client, then they'll give us feedback and we'll just fine tune from there until we have a really good, solid template. Then we're going to use that for the rest of the cards. So we'll do the card fronts usually, then the card back or backs if every back is different. And then we'll format the inside of the guidebook. Yeah, there's like a process, kind of a step-by-step process there
You've got it
because,
all like so organized. It's so impressive.
yeah, because everything, like there's always pieces that need to be in place before we take the next step. So if
Yeah.
there's a guidebook included, then we need to know the final page count and how many cards there are. Those are the two things that we need so we can then order the templates for the box and the booklet cover from the printer because the thickness of the box is going to depend on,
How thick
exactly
the
how
cards
much
are,
is
how
going to
thick
be in
the
there.
guidebook
And
is.
same
Stuff you
with
never
the,
think about until you've gone through the whole process before.
yeah, so that's usually what the creative phase looks like. And of course, there's always every process is going to be a little bit different too. And things like
Yeah.
working through creative blocks, or, I mean, there's those types of things that can be part of the journey as well. But
Yeah. So since I'm a writer, I will generally write half of the card concepts before I even start going into the design because I think there's something in the creative phase of me doing the writing where the visualization practice starts to come through as to what I want the cards to look like. And then somewhere halfway through there, I work with an artist named Joselle, and she's done all 4 decks with me, and we have like I feel very connected soul contract. And she really helps me bring that vision to life. And I send her the cards when I'm about halfway through the deck, and she starts bringing them to life. And then we go through a lot of that same process that you were talking about. It's like, what do the first couple cards look like? You've seen them in the community when I've posted like the kids affirmation decks. They can start as just like rough sketches and designs, and then they change, and then there's color added, and then the text change, and then eventually it finds a home, and then we start producing more cards based on that template, and that usually changes a few times too, just a little bit, small tweaks, and then um, about one half of the way into the deck design is when I will actually get a box template. I don't know how thick the box is going to be yet, but on this particular deck that I'm talking about, this little kids affirmation deck that I'm building, there's no guidebook, so it's easier to guesstimate. And then in reference to the thickness of the box templates that you have to use based on card thickness and quantity of cards, I can guess pretty close with the experience I've had to know that if we have to change it to make it fit better at the end, we could do it and it won't be that much work. But it makes a lot more sense to do it the way that you're doing it, especially if you go through it the first round, so that you don't have to go back and do any, modifying or editing to the thickness of your box design files. But I think there's a really special place in that process for when you get your first box like graphic image, even more so maybe than what the first card is. And like when you see the box, it's like, oh, because it's like it's holding all the cards. Like this is really gonna be real now, And um yeah, I mean after that phase, it's getting samples printed and checking the samples to make sure that the card stock's good. Do they feel good in your hand? Because I always find things. I actually had a dream the other night that I got a card deck in, and it was like the sample was all messed up. And I was like, maybe this was last night. I got like a bunch of boxes of my decks, and they're all messed up. And I was like, oh, they forgot all these pieces. Like such a weird thing to stress about when you're sleeping. And then I realized that I was dreaming, and everything was actually perfect, and there was no problem at all. Um, but when we're nerding out on card decks all the time, I guess they're going to slip into the dreams a little bit. But Yeah, going through the process of getting the samples, and then once the samples feel good in hand, the box feels good, like going into um, making that order. And there's so much more in this that we're going to move on to some other questions and maybe we'll hit some of it. But like, there's so much more as far as how many do you order? You know, what are the budgets around these types of things? Where do you order from? Like, there's a lot of steps. But you know, are you printing just like 30 to 50 for you and your friends print on demand, or do you want a big bulk order? And uh, but yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of the process in general up to that point of printing. Do you have anything you want to add? Anything we missed?
Maybe one thing that just came to mind is like the whole editing process and proofing before
Oh yeah.
printing, but that would be part of the creative process as well. One thing I always want to mention too is, when we create the content, we always have an editor. Like sometimes it's me, sometimes it's somebody else we work with, but I'm really big on, quality, and that includes the design, but also the content. I always wanted to have you know, be polished to professional quality. So we get it edited. Then
Yeah.
there's always a couple rounds of proofreading, usually before layout and then after layout before printing, just to make sure that there are no errors. And usually once you're in the sample phase, when you look at the first physical copy of your deck, you might see some things that you didn't see in the digital files. But yeah, so
I
that's
see
just a little addition here.
I see
It's
stuff now. I found a mistake in my Beasties deck like the other day and was like, oh, well, like years later. But yes, professional editing is there's lots of different editing approaches, especially with AI nowadays. But I find working with a legit editor who knows what they're doing has been very helpful for me.
I'd still say it's really the only way for me. I mean, there's a lot we could say about working with AI, but I really see it as a tool and more like an assistant, but it just can't do what a human being can do in terms of really, seeing certain things. Like there's certain things that only a human being will see, and just years and years of experience, and like there's so many things that go into that. But I really
Yeah.
want to have the human touch, and I don't want, everything just to sound generic and like Chat GPT wrote it. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
it's becoming more and more important too, like even in terms of standing out, and people are not looking for, just a deck, for example, that's like every other deck, or or that sounds, a book
Just an
that
echo
sounds like
chamber.
any other book. People are looking for connection and, actually authentic expression, and that's how we connect to the medicine of the card deck, or yeah, whatever we're creating.
Should we draw
Shall
another
we?
question?
Okay. Number 70. I think that's going to be potentially more of a promotional one. Okay, so I think this is relating to Kickstarter launches or launching your deck in general. But how do I specifically build a following in the tarot community as opposed to other markets? So that's pretty specific, but I think we can still make it somewhat general. So let's say, how do I build a following to promote my deck to launch my deck to once I'm ready to launch? I think maybe we can start there.
There's a lot of factors involved here too. Um, do you have an existing audience? Do you have an existing email list? If not, totally okay, because you could build from there. When I launched my first deck, I had no audience, no email list. And I did a Kickstarter and was able to successfully raise about, I think, $7,000, $8,000, maybe a little less than that, to fund my first print run of, 1,000 decks or whatever that I printed that time. And I look at this because there's all it's like a web or like there's all these little fingers, all these arms or whatever that do little bits of different things. But just like any type of marketing or promotion, you have to be able to drive traffic to your Kickstarter page if you want it to be successful. And it needs to be people that are interested in your product. So whether you're making a tarot deck or a game or whatever, um, you have to start coming up with ways to drive that traffic and to do that. And you can't ever start too early. So Kickstarter has a nifty feature where you can put up a picture and your campaign title, And for those of you that aren't familiar with Kickstarter, it's a crowdfunding platform, um, which has been around for quite a while now, but generally has been in like the tech space and publishing space, and it's really grown a lot in the card deck space. I mean, there's a lot of people who launch card decks through it, but the premise is you can launch your card deck or your product that you create, and other people come and they fund your project because they want it. So they're basically signing up to back your project with their money. And then when it hits a certain number of backers, which is your goal, so well, the goal is set by the number of revenue. So like, let's say my goal is $4,000 I needed to raise to print my decks. I would set that as the goal. And then once you have enough backers that have backed the project to hit that goal, it's considered a successful campaign. And then you get the money released to you when the campaign ends. It's a very simple crowdfunding platform, but it's done really well with card decks. Um, to drive traffic to your page, your pre-launch page, sorry, that's what I was talking about, is you can put up a pre-launch page and you can get project followers before the campaign ever goes live. So it's never too early to start there. Because when your project goes live, Kickstarter is going to automatically notify all of those people that followed the campaign. And that's going to give you a pretty good success chance of converting some of them to being backers. It can be 30 to 50% of those people sometimes. I don't know what it was in your last campaign, Anna, but um, I think it was like 38% on the last one that I did of those pre-campaign followers ended up backing the campaign, which is big. So we have ways and we have tools to calculate how many people, you know, do you need, how much money to raise the amount of money to print your specific card decks. Like I built full-blown calculators for that in the community and stuff that we play with. But to answer the question specifically, like there's the physical side of how do you drive traffic, and then there's like, okay, the strategy side of it. The physical side for me is family, friends, who do you know? It's really just getting a list out and writing down. I mean, going through your cell phone, since it seems impossible to delete contacts out of cell phones these days. It's like there's contacts on my phone from 15 years ago. I'm like, but just scrolling through all of your contacts, and hey, maybe I can let them know. Maybe I can let them know. And just, it doesn't have to be needy or salesy or anything like that, but just the more you start speaking about your project and sharing it around, the more you're going to get followers for it. And that physical side of things, like there was a point in my life where I did that. I made this huge list of people I knew. And I even went out in front of stores and was like standing out in front of stores and passing out little links that people could go and check out the project with samples of my cards. Um, what are you doing physically to talk to people and speak to people to drive them back to your campaign or to get their contact information for when it launches? That could be collecting their emails on your own if you want. It could be building a social media following if you want, although it's harder to connect directly to people through that unless you're direct messaging them. But there's all those little wings physically, like what can I physically be doing there? And the strategy side of it is a little bit can be a lot more impactful in some ways. If you have an audience already, great, you can work off that. If you have an email list already, great, you can work on that. Um, but going in and coming up with your particular strategy for driving even more traffic to your campaign, I think is huge. And that could be something very different for everyone. There's all sorts of YouTubers out there that do deck card reviews that you could potentially get copies or samples of your deck ahead of time and have it set up for when it goes live. They release a video and it sends traffic from their channel to your campaign. You could do collaborations. If you don't have an email list, you could find friends or people from your physical list that you might know that do have audiences that might be interested in your product. If you're a coach, you know, in any industry, but if you're coaching people, then generally you have contact lists. If you're a yoga teacher, you might have people coming to your studio. Like wherever it is in your life that you're interacting with people, um, physically, great, like set that up. But from the strategy side is like keep making like idea lists of like who can I talk to? What can I talk? You know, I'm starting to ramble here a little bit. Um, yeah, YouTube influencers, you can do the ad stuff. Anna, you didn't do any ad stuff. I've done a lot of ad driving, so there's paid traffic as well. It can be very successful. It can also really hurt your campaign if it's not done correctly and can cost you a lot of money. You could break even by running ads if your goal is just to get a bunch of your decks out into the world and you don't really care about making money, but you also don't really want to lose money. That's a whole hours and hours of video where we could talk about what paid traffic is like. Blogs, podcasts, like there's so many different things that you can be doing to drive traffic from the internet back to the page. So I think we probably have a list somewhere in the group of those strategies. And if not, we should definitely put one together.
Yeah, there
Um,
is one.
those are generally the things that I've done, other than building out an email list over time too. I hope that wasn't too complex, but
I think you covered pretty much all the important things here. And I don't even know if I have much to add to that. Maybe I'll just zoom out a little bit and say, I mean, yeah, there's so many ways to do it, and it really depends on where you're starting. So if you're starting with a small audience or no audience, then you start where you are. And maybe one thing that I would want to highlight too is like as much as possible, try to get in front of the kinds of people who are actually interested in what you're creating. So friends and family can be great if you don't have any other place to start. They might have connections and, you know, anyone can help to spread the word and help to support you and even feels good to be supported by friends and family. But also connecting with, the actual audience that has your ideal customer, the person who is going to work with your deck. So it's not necessarily about doing all the things, but also looking at what are the things that are actually going to really pay off. Because if you try to do all the things, you're going to do a little
that's
bit
really
of
important.
everything, and you're not really going to get very far because you're scattered all over the place. So what I usually look at too is, what are the things that I can do that are actually going to be the most efficient ways to build my audience and I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, when I launched my Kickstarter, I already had an established email list. I had an established social media following, but I'm also not the one with the biggest following. Like, I don't have the biggest email list. I got a lot of support from people who helped to share my campaign, and and then also I got a lot of backers directly from Kickstarter too. But you definitely like you need to bring that initial following in, like to basically give your campaign a push. And the more you do that, the more Kickstarter will also help to promote it. But yeah, so I
Yeah.
hope this helps to answer that question.
Yeah, a great misconception with Kickstarter is that you can just put a campaign up and if people like it, they'll back it, and if not, they won't. But generally, that's absolutely not true. And you have to drive the traffic first and show Kickstarter that people want it, and then they'll help promote it a bit more. Um, and that can be very demotivating for creators who don't know that because you could put a deck up that's really beautiful and people would like it, but nobody ever sees it, and then you think and nobody Kickstarter doesn't show it to anyone and your project doesn't get funded and you think, oh, nobody wants what I created. But that's generally probably not true at all. People probably do want it. They just didn't see it. So that's what these strategies come into place is like Anna's saying, there's a lot of different ways to do it, picking the ones that are going to be the most impactful for you and that make the most sense for you. I mean, if you don't have a social media following, you've never put any energy into that, then like picking social media as your main channel of promotion is not going to help you. So it's yeah, finding the right fit, and I think that strategy is something that's important to look at before you even decide to put your Kickstarter page together and start as early as possible. Yeah, if we're
Yes.
talking about that. Yeah.
I feel like we've been saying that
And
on
set your
almost
goal
every call lately.
at a place that feels good and we can help you with that. But not overstretching yourself on what your goal is, especially for your first campaign. And there's ways to calculate out what's very feasible to make sure your campaign is successful, and you can back work from there, backwards engineer down to the amount of people that you're going to need to fund it, and then you could look at all your different possibilities for driving traffic and say, okay, I think I can get this many from here or this many from here, and make sure your puzzle comes together perfectly. So it's worth it. It's worth it to do the work up front.
Yes, absolutely. Because you'll have to do it anyway at some point, and Yeah, maybe I'll just go into that briefly before we jump into the next question. But I just keep seeing that. I think a lot of creative people really enjoy the creative process. That's kind of our comfort zone. But then there's also a lot of us are introverts, and there can be a shyness around sharing. And then we tend to hesitate to share early in the process. There can be, lots of different fears that can come up around that. Like sometimes I hear concerns about, what if I share it too early and then somebody will come and steal my idea and create the same thing, or it's just a general shyness or discomfort around showing up online and sharing or just putting yourself out there. But you will have to do it anyway at some point. So it makes sense to do it early. Start sharing early, start building your following early. It can only help you once you're ready to launch. When you have an established list, then you can launch, you can sell like 100 or 200 decks right away rather than, starting slow and then you just you know, sell one deck here and there, and it just takes a really long time. So if you have that focused effort in the beginning, it really helps to speed things up.
I
Yeah.
think that's the best part about community too, is like we can ask each other's opinions and you don't always have to take somebody else's opinion as truth because that's not true. Whatever's true for you is usually true. But um, just being able to throw ideas off, share campaigns, look at the cards together, and the networking of that. Like there might be somebody that knows someone who's really interested in your topic and has an audience that might be willing to share, that kind of stuff that happens. Because it's a big reason why we put the community together is to help each other go through the process of creating, but also getting these out in the world together too. So sharing.
I guess another thing that just comes to mind too, like when you put the effort in to build a pre-launch following, whether it's through a Kickstarter pre-launch page or building your email list or whatever it is, you can see early in the process if it's working or not. Like if your strategy is working, then you'll get the numbers, people join your list. If you're doing something that's not working, then you can catch it now and you can fix it early in the process. And you
Yeah.
won't have to figure it out once you launch and then you see it's not working. Like that's, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want
I'm
that.
experiencing that right now, right?
So
I've got a
you have
pre-launch
time to
page
tweak it if you need to.
and yeah, drove some traffic to it thinking I was going to get, maybe a couple hundred followers when I did that and ended up only getting like 20. It was like, oh, interesting. I wonder what about this like image or whatever that I put up may not be appealing to people. And so I get to go back and kind of tweak stuff and then see what starts to work before the campaign goes live. It makes a lot of sense.
Next question.
Yeah.
All right. Number 46. Okay, this is a good one. This one is about printing, and the question specifically is how many decks should I make in the first print run?
How many should I make is a question that's solely based on what your particular situation is, but there's an easy way to kind of talk about what the options are here. I mean, from print on demand, which is just you basically pay by the deck per unit. The cost is a lot more expensive per deck, but it's feasible. It's usually domestic. You can usually find a print on demand printer in your country, hopefully, especially if you're in the United States for sure, probably in Canada. Or at least if you're not, you can still get them shipped to your country probably rather efficiently. Um,
Yeah. Maybe I'll
Usually that's
just,
like less than 50 units. Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
yeah, so I'll just jump in here with like, so there's quite a few print on demand printers for card decks in the US. There's not really a good one in Canada, unfortunately. There's one in the UK that's pretty good. I know there's one in Australia, one or two in Australia. And yeah, then there's like some more that are a little more like hybrids where you could maybe get smaller quantities printed. There's a few in China as well. Um, yeah, but there's like some that maybe the minimum print run is not one deck, but like 25 decks or something. And then there's the large scale manufacturers, which usually we work with those. Once you're ready to print like at least 500. Sometimes they start at 300 copies, depending on what exactly you're creating. but usually the minimum print run will be 500 copies. And again, that makes sense if you already have a good following. If you have, when you know you're going to be able to hit those numbers to fund that print run, doing it on Kickstarter is a really great way to do it if you can. Um, but I've also had clients who did just pre-sale campaigns to their email list that worked really well for them too. So there's different ways. They had like a big email list and that worked for them. So I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think it again comes back to like what audience do you already have in place? If you have like an email list of 10,000 people or even less than that, then probably starting with at least 500 or 1,000 copies is going to make a lot of sense because it's going to bring your printing costs down, like your unit cost
Yeah.
significantly. There's a lot of other advantages to going that way because you those types of printers are going to be able to customize your deck a lot more too. Like you can pretty much create anything you want. They have different kinds of boxes, lots of different finishing options. With print on demand, you're going to be a little bit more limited. Often they don't do full length booklets, or they only have maybe one or two finishes to choose from. Maybe you'll have a glossy finish and a really basic matte finish, and that's it. Um, or they won't be able to do
Tuck
the
boxes.
yeah, like the magnetic book style boxes, things like that. Often you're going to be limited to tuck box, things like that. But if you're starting small and you don't want to go through this whole process of building your audience first, then printing on demand and just testing the market that way can also be an option. You can start with just one copy or a few, and then you expand from there.
Yeah, and I think that 500 range is a sweet spot if you're going through a Kickstarter campaign. Um, I'll just add on that a successful Kickstarter campaign might only mean 75 people backed your project and you raised, $4,000 or something like that. And that $4,000 could afford you 500 copies of a deck that you order. So if you use the money to buy a bigger order, like, you're basically pre-selling the deck on Kickstarter, you can order 500 copies, but you only owe 100 of them to your backers or 75 of them or 150. Then you have 300 left over to then sell afterwards as well. And um, I think it's just all dependent on your goal because we have people that come in the community that just want to make decks for them and their friends, and print on demand makes sense. Or digital printing makes sense in that capacity. But if you have a practice or long term you want to be using your deck and getting out into the world as much as possible, then yeah, 3 to 500. There are printers that will do 300, but the price probably goes up.
It does,
It's
yeah.
probably yeah, it's probably not too crazy difference from 500, but it's probably a bit higher. Um, but 300 is still a great quantity, and so yeah, we like to help you figure out what that what that number might be for you, what makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I can't really think of anything else I would add to that right now. Um,
I don't know what the biggest orders people make are. Like if you have a huge audience, you want to order a lot at a time. But I think the most I've ever ordered at once was like, hmm, probably like 8,000 decks, which is a lot. Um,
how many did you have? Like when you launched your second affirmation deck, you had a ton of backers. How many did you print with that?
we had 2,700 backers. I think that print run specifically was just for deck two, second Sweet Ice Affirmations deck that I did. And we printed 7,500 of those, I believe, because most people bought it. I think more than half the people bought a two pack. Yeah, I think we printed 7,500, but we also like didn't have that many left over from the Kickstarter itself. I think we had like 1,000 or something left over. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one that's I'm kind of learning to navigate that a little bit better too
but
with
we
um
printed some of deck one also with it, I think, extra on top of that.
That's definitely one thing to consider too when you're running a Kickstarter. So I got 500 copies printed when I launched this deck, but I actually wish I had gotten more printed because now I'm in the situation where I'll just share this as an example, but I have two fulfillment locations. So I have a warehouse space in the US and then I have inventory here in Canada as well. And I got most of my decks shipped to my location in the US, which is where most of my orders came from, so that makes made sense. But I'm getting close to running out of decks here. So now, okay, next print run is going to be another 500 copies at least. And so I'm going to have to, have the funds to do that. And I know it's all going to work out, but I'm branching out into going to fairs and markets now and seeing, okay, I don't know how much I'm going to sell per market, but just based on what I've heard from other creators, you could easily sell, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 decks, maybe depending on the location and how
I should
many
do that
people
too. I think
show
that'd be
up.
so fun.
I'll have to share more about that with you later.
Yeah.
Something that just happened this weekend, um, but
I
now,
think I'm so introverted that I'm scared of doing it, but
yeah,
people do that full time, as far as like publishing industry, like that's how they sell the majority of their decks and books and stuff is at fairs and things.
yeah, I really wanted to try it out. Like this has been one of those intuitive nudges that have just been really
Yeah.
consistent for the, I don't know, last half year or so. Like go to fairs, go to markets, try it out because um yeah, it feels like an area of expansion for me and I know I enjoy being out there physically and trying out like connecting with new markets. Um it's also maybe a little detail that I can share for the human design nerds out there. My ideal environment is external markets, so that's also would be really aligned with that. So I want to try and see how
Do you
that
know what
goes
mine
for me.
is?
I can't remember, but I can look it up for you.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious.
think it's maybe valleys, but I
Valleys, what does that mean? Like
valleys.
hide in
I just want to look it up first to make sure I'm not.
we can do it.
Um,
We can do it later.
I have the app right here with your information. So I don't know, I just wanted to throw that in here. It's something that if you're curious about it, it's something that I sometimes talk about in our community as well. I've looked at charts. I'm probably going to do another human design workshop for creatives at some point. So, okay, so actually, it's not valleys. Your ideal environment is natural shores. So, shores are areas, landscapes where two different types of landscapes come together. So, it could be something like the ocean meeting the beach, but it could also be, you know, more metaphorically speaking, it could be something like forest meets fields or um, and it's natural shores, so it's going to be a natural kind of environment. It's not going to be,
Yeah.
more like yeah, like two different types of environments meet in a city. It's not going to be like that for you. You need to be in nature and
Yeah. Okay. Markets in nature.
so but yeah, like don't overthink it too because it can be so many things. So it's more about where you're living too sometimes. So your living environment, if you're living in a place where two different types of landscapes meet, that can be really supportive for you. And it doesn't mean that you can't go to markets. It's more sometimes it's more like the two opposites. I don't want to get too technical here, but in human design, like we look at the variables, you have the left facing arrows and the right facing arrows. And so every environment has two variations. So in my case, there's internal markets and external markets. And yeah, so it's more supportive for me to go out and use established markets that other people have built than, let's say, creating my own fair and then inviting people in that would not be as supportive for me. So I've this idea ideally want to avoid, the exact opposite of what my
Okay, yeah,
ideal
that makes sense.
environment is. Um, and there's a lot more that goes into that too, but um, so here's another tangent. I don't even know how we got there.
Passion, that's how we got there.
What
Yeah.
was even the question? Oh,
I
we're
don't know.
talking
We have to
about
draw
the
a new
first print run. Yeah, so
we have to draw a new question.
I guess, yeah, I guess that came up because I was thinking, I do have enough decks here in Canada for like online orders for the next little while, but let's say I go
Mhm.
to lots of markets and I sell like, 30 decks per market or more, then I'm gonna run out really quickly and I'm definitely gonna need more. So it's a good problem to have, but also things to consider. So I think to sum it up, I just wanted to say that next time I order a larger print run, I'm probably gonna order more than just 500, especially if I'm doing a Kickstarter and I have enough budget left over for more decks.
Yeah, that fairy deck needs to be all over the world. And you can take your magical heart healing card decks out there too, and all of your other
Absolutely.
fairy products and cards and journals and stuff. You'd have a nice display.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing that. Like all the products. Some of the
Mhm.
products that we created last year, I actually got printed specifically with the markets in mind.
Oh,
I have some products that I don't even have on my website that I just printed for the markets. Let's maybe do one more question and then I think we have to
okay.
start wrapping up. So this one is actually really similar to one that we already answered. So maybe we'll just do a different one. The question is, what's the best way to build a social media following before launching a Kickstarter? I mean, it is a little bit different. It's
It's a little
specifically
different.
about social media.
Yeah,
And
we can do it.
so maybe, yeah, let's just get a little bit more specific here. But I think we'll just go back to maybe first repeating that social media is not the only way to build a following, especially if you're just getting started. I feel like 10 years ago, it was a lot easier to build a social media following quickly. Nowadays, it can take a lot more time. So, if your main concern is getting enough people on your pre-launch list to launch your deck, then and you don't have an established social media whatsoever, it may not be the best place to put your energy, although, you feel into what feels good to you. But if you do want to do that, like the fastest way to grow, I think, regardless of where you're building your list or your following and you don't have an established audience yet, is basically using other people's established audiences. So collaborations, YouTubers, getting your deck reviewed. That can look like a lot of things, interviews, podcast interviews, and
Where do the people that like your deck hang out on the internet? I will say social media has never been something that I've thrived at. So, I mean, I shouldn't say, I do have some accounts that are doing really well that are just kind of like, I run a fan page account that has 200,000 followers. I didn't really try to make that happen. It just happened, I guess, because it's fun for me and I just do it whenever I'm not trying to force anything there. But I also know that even if you build a big following, because I have experience on both sides of it, like in my card deck business side, now, I've done all sorts of tests and trying to build social media following there. It's really, really hard, even if you do build an audience, to get people off the platform to go somewhere else to buy something from you. That usually takes 3 or 4 different points of contact before they're going to get warm enough to want to buy something from you. So having social media is great, and it can be one of those points of contact that can help you get to that person. But it's tough. It's tough. Those systems are literally built to keep people on the platforms and not to leave the platforms. So, um, that being said, if you do want to go the social media route, if you do have a social media following, there are some really great ways to convert social media into email lists that you can then contact directly. And there's one tool called MiniChat that's becoming more and more popular, but there's a lot of these kind of auto chat tools. They don't work on YouTube because YouTube has policies against them, but they do work with Instagram and Facebook at the moment. Um, and basically, how that works is, and I'll give an example from the card perspective because this is something that's been helpful for us in at Rage Create. People like drawing cards. Let's just think tarot, oracle, whatever. What card is going to find you? We've been able to make some reels that kind of flash cards really fast. And you've probably seen these if you've been on social media in some capacity, but like you're trying to get the user, they see the reel, it's flashing, they take a screenshot, and then you're going to want them to comment what screenshot they got. So in my case, we were doing it with an animal spirit card deck that I made called the Beastie's Oracle. And it was like, let's just say you got the let's say you got the red panda.
It's the one that
Uh,
Chris always gets.
yeah, red. That's just the one that just came to me. Give it to Chris. Um, user. So I'm going to back up just a little bit here too. The point of me doing this is because I know that if I can get people to interact with the post on social media, Instagram is going to show it to more and more people. Okay. So we get them to interact by taking a screenshot, and it's also fun. It's playful. Then they comment red panda. So the directions literally say like one, two, three. One, take a screenshot. Two, comment what animal you got. And three, we'll send you what your oracle message is. Um, and so then the chat system on the back end of that, we were using mini chat, is that once they comment, you have a whole flow set up on mini chat to where it's like if someone comments red panda or red or panda or maybe even a misspelled word of panda because people do that too, or they put a panda emoji, like you can put about 10 different commands per trigger in this thing. Um, if somebody does that, then it will send them a direct message on Instagram that says, "Hey, you got the red panda. Great. You know, please enter your email and we'll give you your oracle." So then they enter their email right there in the direct message and it sends it to mini chat. So you capture it with their name or whatever. And then it reveals a link to take them to read their oracle message. Or it can just reveal the oracle message directly in the DMs. So this can be simplified from that. It could be as simple as, hey, comment on this post. And you've seen this, it's happening more and more, but comment on this post and we'll send you the invitation to this event we're having or whatever. But the mechanism is really just setting it up on these chat systems and then it automatically does this for you. If you spend enough time doing this ahead of time, if you do have a social media audience, this can be really helpful because then you can get people who are interested in playing with your deck, collect their emails ahead of time, and then when you launch or in your pre-launch phase, if you're doing a Kickstarter, send them to your Kickstarter page and send them an email and guide them to your Kickstarter page and get them to follow it there. Then you're covering, okay, one point of contact on Instagram, another one on email, and then they're more likely to help fund your project. So social media can be used in really high ways if you know what you're doing, um, and you have the time and the patience to do it. But 99.9% of the time, I think the experience is we put so much energy and effort into social media, and then nothing really happens from it, and it can feel depressing and it can feel demotivating. And so I myself have taken an approach to not focus so much on it because it just hasn't had the same return as other things that have worked well for me. So
I agree with you. I feel like I have kind of a love and hate relationship with social media. I really like it for certain things. I feel like it can be a kind of a platform that helps me express or self-express and share,
yeah.
things that I'm excited about, and it's part of the launch for sure. Um, but I also have a really hard time, consistently posting because sometimes I guess I could go into down another human design rabbit hole here, but I'm one of those more rare people who have an open throat. So it's going to be hard for me to consistently communicate in the same way. And if I try to do that, then I'm going to lose energy. So I really have to go with my flow. And so, yeah, like having a consistent social media strategy is typically not going to work well for me. But I do love it for connecting with people. Like sometimes I've had really, I've met really great people through Instagram or Facebook, and just connections that I've had for a really long time and that, are supportive in a lot of ways, even just um, more from the networking perspective, or, having people you love to share their journey with. It's all those things as well. And I will say, I do get sales from social media. I definitely got backers for my Kickstarter from social media. So it is one way to, get funding for your deck if you're specifically talking about a Kickstarter. But I would say the most effective way for me to do any of my marketing promotion has, for a long time now, has been email, like building an email list. Feels a lot easier for me than I feel like it's more effective. It's easier for me to grow my list, like my email list. I get more like subscribers more quickly and easily when I have a really good
Mm.
opt-in and a good strategy to drive traffic to it versus doing the same on social media. And then I feel like the engagement is better too because there's not as much distraction. And then the other
Yeah,
thing, yeah, building
interacting
the
too.
pre-launch following directly on Kickstarter, that was a really big one for me too. And they go hand in
Yeah.
hand as well. So
Yeah, they all kind of work
mm,
together.
I feel like those
And
were
in
the
so
two most efficient strategies for me, in addition to having other people share the campaign. Yeah.
yeah. So all of that comes down to networking in some way too. And I mean the sharing aspect of it. I will say another part of social media, and I have friends who have built full-blown e-commerce businesses for their products off this method itself. And it requires social media, but it's not you doing the social media, is social media influencers. And you see this a lot. Like there are people that make full-time livings just promoting other people's products on social media. Just pitching those people isn't going to work. Just being like, hey, you do this and you pitch products here, like it may or may not work, but like if you can come up with a strategy behind that, if you have friends that have audiences that would be interested in your product, I think there's a really good research phase that we can go about where it's like you can collect a lot of information and research going through YouTube and Instagram and finding profiles that would be likely to have audiences that are interested in your type of product. So if we go back to the tarot idea, we can find lots of accounts that are really like posting only about tarot, obsessed with tarot. And then you're just, whether it's through setting up your own affiliate system, which may be a little bit more advanced if you're just getting started, or trading free versions of your product for them to share for you. Um, that can be really effective to drive traffic for purchases because if you have one micro influencer that's got 15,000 followers, but their followers are really, really intricately invested in what these people tell them, and they say, I really like this deck or I really like this bracelet or whatever it is, and they post a link, and they do that a couple times, like you can generate 15, 20, 30 sales from that. And if you have multiple people like that doing it at the same time, it can grow a business. And I've done a little bit of it and I've had success with it a little bit, but I've never put too much effort into it. But I do have friends that have built businesses up, anywhere from 30 to 50,000 a month to even $300,000 a month. And most of that traffic is coming from those relationships that they nurtured over a long period of time with other people that are growing their audiences. And I built a whole business in the past off of that method, and ended up selling it. And in my card deck business, I just haven't done that yet. But I think it's very fascinating because like the hardest work is putting in so much um, to building your audience over time, or at least you have to have a plan, like what you're doing, and like you have a plan for driving traffic to get them. We're making content all the time, just like this, sharing it on YouTube, driving people back, giving people things for free in exchange for an email, and then you're just building that over time. But there are others that have massive followings that have done so much work ahead of time and just one email that they send or a couple posts that they make could really change the volume that you get through your business or through to sell your products. So um my personal strategy is like, hey, can I get 20% of this from people that have influencers? doing 70% for my own email list that I'm building out, and then maybe 10% from social media or markets or something like that. Um, and I will include that new audience for me is generally something that does come through social media, but it comes in a paid traffic manner. So that's another aspect of how you can use social media, but it's a lot more advanced. It's a lot more complicated. It's very easy to lose money. And I've had a lot of success with it and also um, a lot of failure with it, I guess, if you could use that word, as far as losing money too. So still figuring it out, but I think if I look at the overview of how I've grown the majority of my audience, it's been through Kickstarter projects and paid traffic through social media. So, people are on social media and they're going to get ads. And if they see your product through an ad and they click through and you capture their email that way, great. That's great too. But don't blindly jump into doing that without knowing what you're doing, because you'll end up spending all your money and it won't be worth it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's it's definitely a rabbit hole. There's so much to consider here. Let's see. Yeah, I think we got to start wrapping up now. Um, Anything else that you wanted to share before we end this call?
I don't think so. I mean, we have some cool stuff. If you go to deckcreators.com, Anna's put together this really awesome roadmap for creating your card deck, which is probably going to be linked below this video. So you can get that for free. It's actually a
Yeah,
pretty hefty PDF that you created, which is nice.
yeah, like it basically walks you through the whole process step by step to give you a good overview of the journey. And yeah, you can just go to deckcreators.com and it'll pop up after about 5 seconds. Yeah.
The pop-up opt-in, that's what that's
Mhm.
called. And yeah, it's good. I think that's a great place to start. So it'll help you walk through your vision. And of course, if you ever have any questions, you can contact us directly through the site too. And we're always happy to answer questions like this. And sometimes we can answer them through email. And most importantly, like in the community, we're just open access. So yeah, we'd love to hear questions that we haven't heard before if you got any very unique ones.
There's more and more coming. There's so many,
Yeah.
yeah. The more we do this work with others too, the more we see like there's so many great questions that people ask because it's one thing, having done this so many times ourselves. But when you do it yourself, it's kind of a different perspective. But when you get questions from others who are doing it for the first time, then it's like, oh, like to me, this sounds so obvious, but to somebody else, it's not. And it's actually a really great question, something that I would
Yeah.
never would have thought of even addressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm always learning. It always helps me question, if am I stuck in a glass box? Like, am I looking at things from in a tunnel when there's always things changing in the world. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like maybe that's an option. Maybe Pinterest is a great place to post this. Who knows? It's like,
I think some people do it. Yeah.
yeah,
I haven't spent
yeah,
much time on Pinterest lately, but I know it is a strategy that's being used for SEO as well. And I mean, for anything image related or visual that I think can definitely be a strategy worth exploring. And yeah, we are always learning. Like I see every time, the course that we have in the community, I've made it over probably 3 or 4 times now. And every time I re-record it, I feel like, oh, I've learned so much since last time and like what is it going to look like next time? And every time I'm surprised, oh my God, I've learned so much more. And like back then I
yeah.
thought I knew so much and now I learned so much more. Um,
Always changing. That's the beauty of the community, is like when we come together in a group conversation, questions are asked, like as a group and a collective, we can come up with strategies that actually work and we can learn about new things. Like there's always someone sharing something. I'm like, never would have thought about it from that perspective. That's really cool. Like that's a good idea, or um, that's a resource we should create. That's such a good, idea. So fun. Yeah, come join us. Come
yeah,
on in.
creators.com.
Yep.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Heath, for meeting with me again today. I think we
Of course.
jumped into some really interesting, fascinating questions and a lot more than I feel there's always so much more that comes up once we start just diving into something that seems really simple initially. But yeah, it was really fascinating. I learned a lot from you today, I feel.
I'll see you on
And
the live podcast here in about an hour,
and exactly. All right.
which we also
Thank
do
you.
in the this one. So
Thank you so much, Heath, and thank you so much, everyone. Come find us at deckreaders.com, and we'll see you again in our next video.